It's a good thing Michelangelo hasn't come in yet because I don't think he'd fit on screen. Today I'm going to be unboxing 3 TMNT vinyls from Mondo. I've got Leonardo, Donatello, and Raphael. One of the things I'm most curious about with these is how they compare with the other giants in my collection, so stick around until the end of the video if you want to see those comparisons. The Mondo soft vinyls are a Sofubi style figure with a larger scale and lighter weight, and while the turtles just started releasing, it looks like Mondo makes all sorts of different characters. Instead of being shipped in a box, the turtles actually came on card like an old action figure, but if you're afraid of ruining the packaging, they actually came with an extra card back. Maybe they just made a bunch of extra, or maybe they're intended for display, but either way, they look pretty nice, and it definitely makes it easier to check out the artwork. The front has a cool brick wall motif, and on the back, instead of a character list, it has this sewer scene mural. If this is all the characters they're planning to do, this would just be wild. We've already seen images for Raphael and Mondo Gecko, but you can see Punk Frog, Sergeant Bananas, Metalhead, April O'Neil, and even King Lionheart. But the ones I really hope they make are here in this corner, Muckman, Wyrm, and Mutagen Man. And of course they shout out everyone that worked on the project. If you're hoping to display these on card, one thing to consider is the depth of the packaging. I'd say it's a good 5 or 6 inches deep, so make sure you have enough space on your shelf. Another interesting option, since this is a kinda heavy carded figure, they do have this hang tab if you want to hang them up on the wall. And if you're wondering, none of mine were unpunched. I do think hanging them up might be something I try in the future, so I'm going to use the technique I saw Cody from Too Much New Toys use on a lot of his carded figures. I think he calls it the flap method or something like that. And basically I'm just making cuts along one of the sides so I can pull out the inner tray. I would definitely suggest a sharper blade than what I used, but I did improve with every attempt. I think this technique could really work. One of the reasons these have such an intense glare in package is that there's actually an extra tray on top of the figure protecting it, so you could even remove that and slide it back in if you want to. The presentation is simple with the figure on the left and then the accessories on the right, and there aren't any sort of wires or plastic ties holding this thing in, so we can get right to the figure. Raphael is up first, and he is definitely the brightest of the 3 figures. The detail of the sculpt really pops out with these colors, and the bulkiness really reminds me of the old pizza tossing turtles. Instead of keeping the paint a flat color, they added a lot of shading and detail, and overall I'm just really liking the style. We get the monogrammed belt on the front, but then all brown pads around the sides, some nice detail on the shell, a couple scratches over that darker green, and looks like the same thing going on this other side. No obvious articulation points to break up the sculpt on these, which I think is nice for a change. And there is weapon storage right there on the front. Now, just because the articulation isn't obvious, it doesn't mean it isn't there at all. The head can move all the way around if you want it to, the bandana doesn't appear to move. The arms both move at the shoulder. They are a little bit sticky at first, so you need to work them in just a little bit, but not too much. I'd kind of be worried they'd lose their holdability over time, so just be careful. 360 at both wrists as well. And there does seem to be a little bit of movement up at the hip, but I don't want to push it, so just a little bit of a rock is all I'm getting right now. Taking a look at the weapons, Raphael has a pretty cool design for the size. They actually remind me a lot of the Mutant Mayhem giant weapons. Very similar size and bulkiness, and of course you get a pair. I was kind of worried about paint rub when you put them in the front of the shell, but it does seem like there's plenty of clearance inside the belt itself and against the front shell. They look super huge compared to his torso size, but I think it's perfect for this style. As far as getting the weapons into his hands, it feels like a normal giant figure. It's definitely possible to do, but you do have to push in just a little bit. The figures are a soft plastic, but not really super flexible, so be careful. It did leave the tiniest trace of green paint on the handle here, but it is minimal. Overall, I think Raphael is super solid, and I'm liking everything about the looks. Leonardo is up next, and right off the bat you can see he's a darker skin tone, just like the original figures. The body appears to be the same, but of course a different belt and a different facial expression. For accessories, Leonardo comes with his pair of katanas. They're very well done, a straight blade with a pointy tip, a couple sculpted scratches along the side, cool design on the handle, and I definitely wouldn't call the paint shiny, but it does catch the light a little bit. As you can see on Leo's head sculpt, he's got the half-open grand like the vintage figures. And he does have the crossbody double strap belt like the old ones as well. Same pads as Raphael. And another unique part of Leo that I actually thought was a mix-up at first. He has this scratch kind of carved into his headband and cheek, and it's got a little bit of pink paint accent down in there. He's got a couple silver studs on the shoulder of his belt, And then on the back for his weapon storage, it's kind of this off gray color. It's pretty similar to the color of the wrap they use on Donatello's bow. Normally I guess you would see that done in black to match the belt, but I don't mind it. There is a specific way to put in the katanas based on the shape, and they go in pretty easily. You can adjust how far they go in based on how you want it to look from the front, and it seems like they're going to hold their position. I personally want to be able to see those handle designs stick up over the shoulders, so I have mine a little bit further out than normal. Overall, Leonardo is looking good. I like that there are enough differences between him and Raph to justify having both. And of course, for the last one today is going to be Donatello. He's got the olive skin tone, not quite as dark as the original figure, and his bandana is definitely on the pinkish purple side. Donatello comes with a single bow, and you can see there the wrap kind of matches what we saw on the back of Leonardo. For an overall cartoony style, it is very detailed. You can see plenty of wood grain. I like how the end flares out a little bit, and you can even see some details right on the tops. The bottom has its own unique design, so I think this is really well done. As we take a closer look at Donatello, I want to talk about the quality of the material. A lot of people, including myself, have never owned a soft vinyl before. It's kind of throwing me off because it feels so light, but it's not like I would actually consider it to be soft feeling. There's really not any sort of give on any part of the figure, maybe the tie on the bandana, so it's not like I'm worried about breaking it or anything. Just something new. I didn't notice it before because it's hidden so well, but you can separate the bow to get it into the sheath on the back. I don't think it really matters which end you start with or which one you have on top. It seems to go in really easily. Again, you can vary the amount you want sticking up over the top of the shoulder, or if you want to push it down so he has kind of a third leg. There is a specific way you have to put the two ends of the bow together. It kind of has one flat side to make a D for Donatello. On his belt, I'm sure you noticed they went with the single strap design, and the holster on the back actually matches the belt like Raphael's, instead of what they did for Leonardo. Here's a look at all three figures together with their weapons stored, and here they are ready for battle. Watch out for the length on those katanas. One of the things I was most curious about with these figures is how they scale with other giants in my collection. And as you can see, I've got a few to choose from, so let me pull a few down and we'll do some comparisons. Starting off, looks like he's about half the size of a NECA Toon giant, and then a little over halfway when it comes to the vintage Playmates giants. They are a little bit closer to the reissues from a couple years ago. Here he is next to an '03 giant, which they actually share some design qualities. Even those giant mutating turtles are a little bit taller, but the closest comparison height-wise to a true giant is probably the trolls. My biggest non-giant vintage figure is probably this turtle in a turtle, and the new one towers over that. But if you want something to compare just so you can visualize it in your own collection, the closest thing I could find is this NECA Evil Rex 1. The smaller size does lend itself to layering really well, and I think they look pretty nice placed in front of those older vintage figures. Now, in addition to me waiting for Michelangelo, they've also announced a few other figures in this line. I believe Mondo and Raphael are exclusive to the Mondo website, and then we've also seen prototype figures for Super Shredder and Baxter Stockman. I love bigger giant style figures, so these are definitely worth it for me, but let me know if you think you're going to go in on this line. If you made it this far, a share and a comment would be a huge help, and I'll be sure to post when Mikey arrives. Thanks for watching.